Welcome back out to the Shield Army. We're so glad that you are tuning in with us today. It is Wednesday. At least if you're listening to it on release day, it's Wednesday. Who knows what day it is when you're actually listening to it. So we never know. Some people listen to them day one. Some people wait a couple months. Who knows? But either way, we're glad to be here. I am Chaplain Hughes. I'm here with Chaplain Potter and Chaplain Stephenson. Fellas, it's good to be back at the table with you. We did some serious talking about parenting on last week's episode. That was a lot of fun. I know we're continuing to learn from that every day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm pleased to report back to you guys that my wife gave her enthusiastic stamp of approval to that episode. In her eyes, we hit a home run with that. So that always makes me feel better when when my wife is strongly in support of an episode like that when we were talking about parenting. So I think we did it, guys. Congratulations.
I've always wanted a kindergarten teacher's approval, like from way
Finally.
back when.
Well, when you said that we had our eyes, I was wondering if maybe it should be we have our ears.
Ooh,
you know,
yeah.
So.
Wow.
Sorry, that was terrible.
I do need her help though with my son.
Joke.
Maybe Mac could stay with her for a couple weeks over the summer.
She's all about it. She really would like to teach Mac next year. If we could find a way to make that happen, she would love to have Mac in her class next year.
My youngest son walked into the kitchen this week in his underwear, and he's 4, and he said, "Don't mess with me. I'm dangerous."
I wonder where he learned that from.
And he just, Mom's the worst. I mean, she's a
well, as
she's
long
a violent
he can come visit as long as he didn't bring his hatchet. So
yeah, there was a hatchet incident, but we don't chase our friends with hatchets anymore. So mistakes are made.
For sure.
Not raising wimps, we're raising warriors in the Stephenson household.
Oh boy.
So, well, maybe we should go ahead and get started with today's episode because I'm not 100% sure where all these stories, the trails are going to take us down. So we'll go ahead and jump in. Well, guys, today we are excited to have a conversation about leadership and about what that looks like specifically in the realms of law enforcement. And we are excited to have a guest on with us today. We were just having a conversation, but just prior to this episode about we can see from the numbers that people thoroughly enjoy when we have others on the podcast that sit at the table with us. And so that's what we've done today to discuss this topic of leadership. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give our guest a chance to introduce himself, tell us who he is, a little bit about himself, maybe a little bit about his career, a little bit about his family. Just kind of give us a quick overview of who you are and let everybody know who you are that's joining us today.
All right. I'm Danny Bruch. I'm a commander with the Roanoke County Police Department. I've been there for just over 15 years. And I'm currently assigned to the Roanoke County Criminal Justice Academy. So a little bit about me and my family life. Married to my wife, Nicole. We have 2 kids, Grayson and Braden. One's 10 and one is 3. They are polar opposites. And mine is 3. He's not 4, but he is a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
So
we should not get them together.
No. He keeps us on our toes. Unfortunately, our 10-year-old's at a spot now where he's pretty self-sufficient and helps us out a ton. As far as my time with the police department, I've had several different roles I've been assigned to. In my early time with the PD, I was assigned to midnight shift, then went to the traffic unit for a year and came back to midnight shift after that, became a field training officer, spent a little bit more time there, went back to traffic for almost 3 years, was assigned to the crime prevention as crime prevention coordinator, did that for 2. Then was promoted to sergeant. Then from sergeant went back to mids as a sergeant, spent a little time there. And then I was tasked to be on the DUI task force. So I supervised the DUI task force for 2 years. And then from there went to daylight shift, went to the academy as a sergeant, then promoted to commander, went back to mids, and now I'm back here at the academy. So
it's a journey.
Man,
you get paid for your mileage in your career.
It's
going all over.
I've had a variety of different roles I've had to step into. Evidence collecting is not my thing, so fortunately I've kind of stayed away from that realm.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's given me a lot of tools to throw in my toolbox as time has went on.
That's awesome. That's a pretty significant career. Not only have you done a lot of different things, but you've went through several levels of leadership, it sounds like.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you, having multiple supervisors or different supervisors along the way has kind of helped mold me into the supervisor and leader that I want to be. You pick up things from everybody, whether it's good or bad. And fortunately for me, I've had a lot of great supervisors that have helped, lead me along this journey. And, I'm just trying to pass that along as well.
Sure. And thinking about that, what are some like milestones or things as we look through our career and our life? We can think back to a couple things that go, that made me who I am today. Whether good or bad, that one is why I make the decisions I make. What were some of those kind of early on in your career?
Starting early on, fortunately for me, we had a lot of senior officers still on patrol. So at that point in time, they helped guide us on the road, right? Yeah. So if we had questions, we went to them first before we ever went to a supervisor. And watching them and how they operated, kind of helped mold me. I had 3 fantastic field training officers that helped me as well and kind of put me on the path that I'm on. And as time went on, whether it be on patrol and I was field training, although riding in the passenger seat can be intimidating at times, especially if you're running priority, lights and sirens to somewhere and somebody else is driving.
Ask us how we know.
Yeah, we know.
It's a faith experience.
Right. But, helping new officers get through those times. And not only are they learning, but there's a lot of funny moments at the time and you get to know them. And then, as I went to different spots in the department, I got to just get to learn about myself a little bit more. I've had a really good mentor that I still seek out to today. And as time's gone on, I've gained several more mentors that help guide me, and I trust their advice, and and keep going in the right direction. Hopefully, there's also moments that have been difficult. In my time here as a supervisor, in particular, I directly supervised an officer who committed suicide, and at the time, you sit there and you can't help but blame yourself for some of that, right? Yeah. But fortunately, our peer support and our agency chaps, it's helped us through that moment. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about some signs that I may have missed, right? Because I don't blame myself for that at all. But there were indicators that I could have picked up on, right? And I don't fault myself for that. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I didn't really realize it. And, that experience, I've matured from that. And it has really shaped me on how I want to interact with the people that I do supervise, and how I care for them and genuinely care for them, right? Because we are a big family, but not just work related, but get to know them on a personal level. Yeah. And, I don't expect them to tell me everything, but kind of get to know what makes them tick. What are their interests? What's their family life like at home? And in the long run, I think it makes them happier at work and better employees for our agency.
I remember that incident that you just referred to, and it was such a difficult time. That's not the phone call that anybody wants to get. No. And I'll never forget the chief at that time calling me and informing me of what had happened. And, it's not one of those things that any department wants to go through. And unfortunately, many departments have. But I certainly pray that we never have to go through that again in any of the departments we serve. But I am thankful for people like you who have looked at that and say, wow, like we can't change what happened. We can't change that horrible day. But what can we take away from this? How can we grow? How can we learn from this to maybe help prevent this from happening again? And so I am grateful for people like you who take that approach after something that devastating.
Yeah, honestly, one of the most difficult things you'll go through in this profession, because we all generally we love each other, right? We frustrate each other at times, but we're a big family, and it was tough, and it still is tough, right? Because that's something will live with me for the rest of my time. Like I said, I don't blame myself for it, but it's a big moment of my supervision that's happened to me. So
there's a couple of things you said that are huge. Let's kind of take them piece by piece. one of the things you said is that you have a lot of mentors. And so Scripture says, in the multitude of counsel, there's safety. So I can sit in my truck and go, well, I got a pretty cool idea. Sounds good to me. Hits my filters, like, let's do it. You run that by some other people, and they're like, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. Like, you didn't consider this one part.
Right.
And you're like, oh, yeah, you're right. And that's so true. But I do see in leadership, there are two different leaders. Ones that will isolate and lead from afar, and there are ones that will collaborate and take that in and then make the decision. Now, we're not talking about the leader that says, what does everybody want to do, and just gauges the room and then picks one. Well, that's not leadership. That's polling. We can do that over a survey. But somebody that truly has people around them, that's a pretty awesome thing. What would you tell either a young supervisor or a soon-to-be supervisor or a seasoned guy in the area of having counsel beside you?
You know, for me, honestly, it's one of the most important things to have. And, you know, a mentor for me, the person that, you know, I'm close with or that I've sought guidance from pretty much, you know, the entirety of my career. There's been several others that, you know, that have come along that have supervised me. Yeah. And, you know, not only do they care about me at work, right? They ask about home life. They have vested interest in me, or at least, you know, it seems like that, right? And they get to know me on a more personal level. So, you know, it's not being afraid to reach out to those and ask those questions. Or if you have an idea, and it may be a great idea, it may be a terrible one, like you said, and it's have that person that you can trust and that has kind of led the way, and to be able to bounce that idea off of somebody is a great thing. And, you know, I think it does help that I've had the opportunity in the police department to be in a bunch of different roles. So, you know, when you go to patrol, you know, you may see some detectives when they come out, unless you know them on a more personal level, but, you know, you're really hanging out with patrol. And so I've been able to move around in different aspects of our department and get to know people on a different level. Yeah. And, but yeah, it's just find that person, or find a few that, you know, you look at and you highly respect, and you're like, man, they're at where I want to get to, and just ask those questions. Or like, if you have questions about going to a different, like, leadership school or whatever it may be, talk to them about it. Be like, hey, what's the benefits of this one versus the other, and get that. And you got to have to goal in your own mind too, right? Like, where do you want to get to? And whether it be if you want to get to a sergeant, commander, or higher, or even if you just want to stay on patrol, you know, set those goals for yourself and work towards those. Yeah.
Kind of what I hear you saying is, again, that we need a bunch of different battle buddies around us. And we've talked about in episodes before about friendship. You don't want a friend that just tells you everything's good. Right. I need a friend that is going to say, hey, that's not so good. Love you, mean it. I don't want to hurt you, but I don't want to see you suffer.
or challenge you, right, to get out of your comfort zone as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, I was awarded the opportunity to do leadership Roanoke Valley. Oh, cool. And at the time, I was the only patrol officer for our department that ever went and did that. And, you know, you're like, man, that's kind of it's a daunting task. It's interesting. Yeah. And, you know, I was just an officer, but I had aspirations to move up in supervision. And I learned a lot about myself, learned about others. We did the DISC assessment, and I know that may seem very basic, right? But in that assessment, not only did I learn about myself, but I learned about how others react to different leadership styles and what makes them tick. So that helped me on patrol supervising, and still helps me to this day. Yeah, understanding who's around you. So we understand DISC, and we understand some of that stuff. Give us a 10, 20 second layman's redneck term for what in the world is DISC. It's, you know, whether or not you have like a dominant personality, if you're introverted, if you're extroverted, if you're more like community oriented, or if you're more like, and you learn, like, do people need more gratification, or is it you're more of a person that you just do your thing and you get satisfaction out of that? And it was pretty cool when we had somebody come in and present on that whole thing. And you know, I'm pretty extroverted, and I'm an easygoing people person. So like, where I fell in the DISC assessment made sense for me. But then you could be like, wow, I could really see somebody that fell in this window, and this is how I kind of need to operate with them.
Yeah, I think it's very helpful. My first exposure to that was probably Mercy, and as I think back, it's probably almost 20 years ago. But just to realize that regardless of how you operate, the tendency is to think that everybody operates the same way you do and understands the same way, receives things the same way you do, and that kind of thing. But DISC was very helpful and helped me realize that, some people are fine with you just giving them a few details and they'll just run with it and make things happen. Other people need a game plan, need everything kind of laid out for them. And if they have that, then they're going to thrive with that game plan, the details. And just in my own household, like, my wife is somebody that she doesn't work in the abstract too well. Like, show me the game plan, have the structure, have the outline, in place there, then I can work within that structure extremely well. But if I'm too vague with things, if I don't, like, she's like just staring at me like, I don't, what do I do with that? And so it's so good that you bring that up. It's very helpful in leadership and really any level of leadership, to know how you need to communicate and interact with different personalities, different people, the way we're wired.
And it falls in line with the way law enforcement now is too, the generational differences. We were talking about this before we came on the air here. There's a major difference from even though I've only been doing this 15 years, it's a big difference now versus it was then, right?
Yep.
And I had great supervisors back then, but the relationships were a little bit different, right? Patrol officers were a little bit different. I wanted to come to work hard, and, I just keep on trucking. Where, now, officers come and work hard, and they want to know, like, hey, in 5 years or in 3 years, I'd like to be awarded this opportunity. And it's difficult, right? Because if you don't have that much movement in the agency, it's like in their mind, like, what, man, 3 years seems like a long time. When I started, you're like, I just want to keep on. I'll work patrol, and wherever it takes me, it takes me.
Yeah.
So it is like understanding different leadership style or different, people's individual styles and officers' individual styles now versus what it was when I first started is completely different. So it's been a learning experience.
So now that you're in the role that you're in now, and you get to be at the academy and get to see new recruits coming in and that kind of stuff, I'm kind of curious. It's easier when you were younger and you're in that patrol season and you're a regular officer, you're serving. It's a whole lot easier back then. But as you start climbing the ranks, this becomes a bit of a balancing act. But I'm just kind of, you were talking about your mentors, but now that you're kind of sitting in the seat you're in now, you start to learn to pass that baton down, and you start learning to become that person for somebody else. How do you balance the command authority with the need to build that trust and rapport and that mentorship with the people now, and just kind of, again, passing down what you've experienced?
I'll tell you, if you ask Michelle and Sergeant Brown that work in the office with me, they'll tell you I need to start charging by the hour for like counseling services, right? Because, and they will, because, people will call me, or, people will stop by the academy. Like you're like on your own island over here. Yeah. And it's a safe spot for people to just come and talk, and whether or not they need to vent, or if they're trying to work through their own issues. And I was a member of our peer support team. So I think part of that helps, right? But for me, it's building those relationships, and I have built those relationships, at least with my folks that I supervised and worked with on a midnight shift, and they would still call me, and I had one call me the other week, and I was like, what's up? And I thought he needed something, right? And it was like, no, I just want to call and say what's up and talk. And to me, and that says a lot, because I had great commanders coming through my time on patrol, but we weren't just calling to say hello. We would call and say, we need something.
Sure.
That's not a negative knock or anything. That's just, it is what it is, right? Yeah. So, they still reach out to me, seek advice. Other sergeants and other commanders come and talk to me. And as I reach out to them if I need something too, and speak to them. So for me, it's being there for them, giving them honest feedback, whether or not they like to to hear that type of feedback or not, being fair. And, you know, if I don't know something, being honest about it, like, hey, I really don't know. I can figure it out and I'll let you know, or, hey, this is what I found. And it, you know, I think that builds credibility, and realizing that there's all types of different leadership and it all works in its own way. And it's finding that balance and working through that to achieve the goals that, you know, Chief Poindexter and, you know, the county has set for us, right? So it's just figuring out a way to accomplish that. And I'm very personable, so I just try to stay in tune, get to know them, understand their family life. And if they don't want to share stuff, that's fine, you know, but you learn some interesting stuff about people and you figure out what makes them tick. So hopefully, you know, by people still reaching out to me and me reaching out to them, checking on them and seeing how things are going, or if I hear something that's kind of funky, you know, or funny, I'm like, hey, you know, I heard this was going on. What do you got going on, if you want to talk about it? And hopefully, you know, that's passed down the line as they mature as an officer, right? And as they go along further in their career, they can pass that along.
So that paints a pretty neat picture that your supervisor style has been developed over pretty highs and pretty lows.
Right.
So you develop that over years and years. And what you're finding out now, kind of what I hear you saying, is that you really need to have a relational involvement with our officers. And historically, that's not been the case.
No.
If you do what I say and you do it well, that means we have a good relationship. Sign here,
right.
Go to the next.
There's a time and place for that too, right?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Life does have to go on.
Right.
And it's not all about eating cheesecake and talking about our feelings.
Right.
Like that
Cheesecake.
Yeah,
Wow,
see.
I love cheesecake, man.
Yeah, we've lost
Especially
both of
with
them now.
chocolate topping.
They're gone.
But that's not real life. Stuff has to get done. And so what would you say? So in several departments, kind of what we see is that there are those different styles, and you have to know who's beneath you to serve them and to serve them well. And Scripture would say that anybody that chooses to rise up in leadership, that's a pretty big calling. That's not just a pay bump and something cool on the collar. What you're saying is, I'm going to be a protection for those beneath me.
Right.
I'm going to lead. I'm going to guide. I'm going to shepherd in some regards. And part of that is discipline. Part of that is expectations. Part of that's accountability. But what would you say to the supervisor that continually is dealing with problems within their circle, and they keep saying the phrase, they just don't have it. They just don't get it. I don't think they have the ability to get it. You ever heard somebody say that?
Oh yeah. You know, that you have to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And whether it be something going on in their personal life, whether or not they are disgruntled here for whatever reason, figure out what makes them tick, right? Or at least what is their interest, or, hey, like maybe something else is going on. And if it doesn't work for me, right? So if I can't get something relayed, or if I'm having trouble with it, I have built relationships with other supervisors and other folks that may be able to connect with them, right? And being able to know the resources that are available for folks if they are struggling. And, you know, they're not everybody's going to agree with what you say or you know, the goal that needs to be accomplished, right? Sometimes we get tasked with stuff that some people don't agree with, or a particular policy comes out, or a change and they don't like, right? But that's the responsibility of our chiefs, and they make that decision, and they have, you know, we respect that decision, right?
Yeah.
And then it's being able, like, well, here's why it is this way. So, you know, if they're not connecting with them, we're going to have to figure out a way, like, where is that disconnect? So why is that happening? Is it a personality clash? And I get it. There's a time and place where you have to be direct and be like, hey, look, this needs to happen. And if not, this is what could potentially, you could be disciplined, or you could be put on an action plan. And that's like the last thing I want to do, right? And let me figure out what's going on. And that's a different approach, right? Because some people are like, well, they're not doing it. We're gonna discipline them, and if they don't do it, they're gonna keep getting disciplined. You know, and for me too, it also helps when you get to know your coworkers and get to know these officers that you're supervising. you can tell if they really care or if they don't. Do they have a vested interest in this profession, in the county, wherever, in law enforcement, or if are they doing this just because it's a job, right? Yeah. And you also have to take those things into consideration. So for me, somebody who is struggling, but they genuinely care, and they just, like we all do, mess up from time to time. That goes a long way, though. Those folks, you can help guide and try to fix that. There are some people in this world that it doesn't matter what you say. It may just not click, or it may not work. And that's okay too, because this job isn't for everybody. And sometimes it takes time to figure that out.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're not a great person. It's part of it.
Yeah.
And
it's part of that natural attrition.
Right. And don't take it personal.
With what you're saying in relating to some of the low points in your career, losing someone that you directly supervised, what are some of those things? Because what I hear you saying is, do these supervisors really press in and know who you're supervising?
Right.
Don't just supervise them. Know who you're supervising. By knowing them, you're not fixing anything, but you have a true read on the situation. What are some of those, if you didn't choose to know your people, what are some of those warning signs that you would miss?
Work performance, obviously, right? And you notice that, but you're like, they just don't want to work. That's why they're acting that way, right? But if I knew them beforehand, if I knew their journey that got them where they're at, or if I knew when they're on a different shift, how do they operate then? They were a hard charger, or, they were pretty active, or they stayed involved in community events, and all of a sudden something changed, I'd be able to pick up on that, right? I'd be like, all right, something's different than it was like a year ago. Whether or not they're calling out from work, you start picking up on those things. If I know there's an issue going on at home, and I don't need to know the exact details, but like, hey, there's a stressful time at work, or it could be childcare, it could be their kid sick, it could be whatever, right? I'm like, okay, this isn't too alarming. But if they don't have some of these external issues going on, or just like life in general, right? Maybe it is a bigger problem. I don't know. I'm easygoing and at a fault sometimes, right? So it's just, I genuinely care. I'm honest with them, and you just try to figure them out. And you learn, like I said, you learn about some cool stuff that they've done in their life before law enforcement, some of their hobbies now. Like I just even ask them like simple questions, like what kind of music are you listening to? And like what's your go-to song if you had to put on something right now? And you'd be surprised like how much that sparks a conversation in a room, because everybody's like, I didn't know you listen to that. And or like, you like, what's your hobbies and that type of stuff. So and not putting it like that way, just having like a casual conversation with them. And when they come to you for advice, you need to build that trust with them, right? And it's okay for me not to know the answer, but if I know where to find the answer, that they respect that, right? Or at least you hope they respect that. Can I make the right decision when the time is needed? Right. That they respect that. If you make that sound decision at the time, that builds that trust and that respect. Yeah. If you mess up, being humble about it and saying, hey, look, I messed up on that decision here, right? We could have done this better. So build that trust, build that respect. It's mutual. And whether or not I'm at the rank of commander, yes, I'm, the supervisor, right? I'm in charge of the shift, but it takes all of us to accomplish it, and all of us to maintain a healthy work environment. And you don't want people coming to work miserable, right? Yeah. That's not fun for anybody. You only live once, right? So it's like, if you're going to do this profession, and it's a tough profession, not for everybody, and it's challenging on family life, it's challenging on everything. You've got to be happy doing it. And if you're not, then it's like, man, is it worth it for you? Then plenty of people leave and do better stuff, right? So it's by knowing your people, right? Like truly knowing them, right? Even you were kind of bringing up as a funny thing about the music, but truly knowing all that. Like let's say you mentioned you're a hunter, so I'm glad to have you on the podcast.
Here we go again.
Not to pick on people, but there's those of us in the room that don't hunt.
I've tried.
I know, me too.
I hunt really well. I just do it inside of
Right.
Aldi or
That's called
Kroger.
grocery
Sam's.
shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can call it what you want. I put on my hunting
it's-
boots. I go in and I stalk out the right piece of meat at the grocery store.
I don't know that we're on the same page.
I get it in my sights, let me tell you, and I don't let it out. So.
See, there you go.
They formulated their excuse.
I like
And
it.
sometimes in supervision, you have people that come prepared with every.
Right.
No, but by knowing, like even the hunting analogy, if you have a guy in your shift that's his thing, man, I love hunting. I love that. And you're like, hey, have you been hunting this year? No, I haven't. That would be a red flag, right?
Right.
You have a guy's normal baseline. And that's why we want to have a relationship with people, is because we can at least face value, understand what makes them tick. And you start seeing these things that you haven't hunted this year. That if that's your number one love, what's going on? Like, is there financial stress where you can't?
Right.
Stuff at home? Like, why are we not doing the thing we love? And so as a supervisor, then you can see that with just by noticing things in terms of people's like hygiene and preference. Like if a guy's always squared away,
Right.
and all of a sudden, man, you look like a slob. Like, what happened there? That's not as normal.
Right.
So we're seeing a little bit of this go away. That's a really big deal. Really, really big deal.
Well, one of the things I was excited about to see you walk through the door and join us for this episode is I figured you were going to bring the good news that Roanoke County is going to provide a car to Chaplain Potter.
We've been working on that for a while, huh?
Yeah, we've been campaigning for years. It hasn't seemed to get me
I
too far,
thought
but
he was giving me a staccato.
oh,
I don't know if I have enough street cred for either of those options, you know?
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's okay.
We have our dreams.
Yeah.
We won't relationally hold it against you.
Well, I appreciate
We'll
that.
still eat lunch together.
Oh,
Yeah. So just a question, like you're 15 years in, right? Is that
Yep.
the number
Yeah,
I think
March,
I heard, right?
Yeah, March was 15. Yep.
Okay, so obviously you made the comment today that things look a lot different now than they did when you first started. Looking back, what would you, if you could go back to your younger self back at the very beginning of this journey, what would you tell your younger self? Or maybe you would tell your younger self when you first started the process of stepping into ranking positions. What would you say to yourself back then when you first started the promotional process that you know now that you wish you could have told your younger self back then?
It's a good question.
Yeah. That's a deep one.
It is deep, and there's a lot of different ways you can go with that, right?
Yeah.
Step out of your comfort zone, right, and take on roles or take on different either positions within the agency, and even if you're nervous about it or if it stresses you out, work through that, right? Because as time goes on, you get put into roles here at the department or wherever you're at, that it can be uncomfortable, right? Or you don't know what's going on, and it's putting all those tools in the toolbox to help get you to where you're at. That way, you know, I may not be an expert in everything, but I've gained experience in a lot of different things that will help me make a sound decision as time goes on. So it would be even, you know, step out of that comfort zone on some of those things and do them, right? And that's on every level. That can be from basic patrol officer if you want to do SWAT, and say if that's like something that you're kind of hesitant about because you don't feel like you're tactically sound enough for that, right? But you can get tactically sound for that, you know, with practice and training and reaching out to the folks on the team. And sometimes to say that you need that help or you don't know that's uncomfortable, right? And we're in a profession where we're so used to taking charge of every situation we're in, and to have that vulnerability is a tough thing for us to show, right?
Yeah.
But it's okay. We are human. That's part of it.
Well, let's just face it. You can't you can't get better at anything until you're in the middle of something, learning how to be better at that thing, right? I mean, that's a lot of what you're saying there, is that it's hard to be a really good SWAT officer if you've never trained with SWAT. You know, it's really to learn the tactical things that you learn as a part of those trainings and all that kind of thing, because you're only going to get them at that training, you know?
Right.
And so just like becoming a police officer, most people have no idea what is involved or what they have to do to be a police officer before they join the academy. And that still doesn't give them a full perception until they get in a car and start doing FTO, and they get to put all of that to practice.
And that's a good point, right? So I share my example, right? You come to the academy, like, okay, I figured it'd be a little tough, right? Kind of like the military, kind of not. It was a big shock. And I lived in Lynchburg at the time, so I was commuting.
Hey, I used to live there.
Yeah, every day. And that drive, although it was like 50 minutes, seemed very long. And you're sitting there thinking, like, what in the world did I get myself into? But then I had a very close class that we leaned on each other. We saw each other all the time. So we all were going through that together. And, I feel like I've always been driven to work hard, and I'm never really satisfied. I just like to keep moving along. So the academy was a good challenge, right? And then you get out in field training, and you're like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And, your field training officer looks at you like, man, you're pretty slow. And you're like, well, I'm really not that slow of a person. It's just, there's a lot happening, right? This is different than doing a practical in the gym.
Yeah.
And figuring that out. And then, like, I'll tell you, when you drive your police car home for the first time and you don't have a field trainer car, that's a cool moment for you in your police career. Like, wow, now what do I do? Right? Like I'm by myself. I've got people I can call to ask, but yeah, it's interesting, and I didn't expect it to be the way it was. Right. But when you get done with that, getting through the academy and getting through field training and getting this far along, you sit back and you laugh, and some of those most difficult times are the ones you remember the most, and you don't change it for anything. And then you realize, hey, those moments that were difficult in the academy, they did have a purpose. Hey, the honor guard that was here inspecting us, every day of the week, they're squared away out working patrol. So I can see why they were the ones that came in and inspect us and made sure we were together. So yeah, it's fun.
That's cool. So we've looked back, and so now I want to turn the table.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to use the same statement when I asked that question. It's changed a lot in the 15 years that you've served, and a lot of things you've seen looks very different now than it did the day you started. From what you've seen so far, in your perception, what does the future of effective police leadership look like?
We're going to be young, right? So it's a young agency. Fortunately, we still have some older folks that are still hanging out and working and helping passing on some of that knowledge. But the future is
a trend.
Yeah.
That's a trend across a lot of agencies. And if you go to national trainings, you hear the same thing, right?
Right.
It's not just Roanoke County. We are very young. That's hard for leaders. You were saying that when you started early on, you could look at these giants and go, ooh, that's what I want to do. Now your giant he's been on patrol 5 years.
Right.
That's the hero.
Right. And it's only getting younger, and we'll go through waves, I'm sure, as the years go on, and you get some people apply and some don't, right? But the trend has been it's very limited on those folks that are applying nowadays to want to do this profession. And it's being able to connect with the folks that you're leading now, because, although I'm a commander, the officers that are on patrol, or the folks that I was supervising on patrol, are going to be leaders, hopefully, right? When I'm about to retire. So that is the future. And you want to keep some of the old ways, right? Because some of that is important. The discipline and the strictness of things, that's some of that is very important in our profession, and it can keep you alive. But it's finding that balance, right? And then, you look at the way people are getting promoted now. Everybody has different leadership styles, and obviously some of the promotions have been younger as of recent for us. Me being one of them, right? I'm young relatively speaking. I don't feel that way sometimes, but obviously I am. And it's understanding that we all have different leadership styles, and being able, I don't want sergeants that I'm working with to be the same as me. I need somebody that's a little bit different, somebody that has a skill set than I do, or somebody that may challenge the officers in a different way than I do, because it's good for the officers on patrol and anywhere in the department to realize that, right? Not everything is the same, and you may be told no sometimes, right? And it may not go your way, but here's why, and this is what we can work to get to your goal. But yeah, no, I just think the future is young for us, right? And fortunately for us, we have great leaders from the top down, and commanders that are senior to me, assistant chiefs, and Chief Poindexter. They've all mentored me in some way, right? And whether or not it was when I was just promoted to sergeant and doing my month of sergeant, like FTOing in a sense, right? Or it's just passing that knowledge on. So it's young.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, just last week there was, as an agency, as SHIELD, we went and participated in a behavior health walk, and it was Mental Health Awareness Week, and we got a chance to go walk with the group. It was in the rain, very much the rain. We used umbrellas. Poor Scarlett had to stay under the awning.
Yeah, and Scarlett couldn't stay alone, so I took one for the team and stayed where it was dry with Scarlett.
Right. Sacrificial servant.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, where they happen to be cooking food, but whatever.
But I shared that to ask a question because something that I'm trying to figure out how to say this. We're coming out of a stigma with the mental health world, especially within law enforcement and first responder community, and that's becoming a bigger and bigger thing. You were talking about you serving on peer support. The three of us, we do a ton of peer support. And so mental health is really important to us. And so, for agencies, it's really got to be important to the leadership if it's going to be effective within their agencies. So I'm just kind of curious, as somebody who's a commander, who's filled all the roles you have, walked the road you have, how do you see that, and how do you believe that as in leadership, how do we effectively impact officers under our command when it comes to mental health needs they have throughout their career?
I'll tell you, our department does a great job with peer support, and Chaplain Potter, we see you quite a bit with us, and with Sergeant Moppin, who kind of leads up that program for us, right? So we're really involved in that. But it all comes down to, we've got to care about people as the person, right? We are all employees of Roanoke County, who work with me, right? But what is the most important thing, right? We've got a job to accomplish, yes, but you as a human being, and making sure you're okay and you're mentally sound, and making sure you're getting the help that if you do need, right? And if you need it, and folks feeling comfortable enough to maybe talk to just that one person. And that's a very difficult thing, right? And I'm sure we've all have faced some challenges where it's took a toll on us, right? And being able to have confidence in a person that you can trust them and you can reach out, because this job is so tough on a lot of things, right? It's a fun job to have, truthfully. It's a great profession, but it is very taxing on your family life. And I'll tell you, I asked when I was a brand new officer, officers probably been there 5 years at the time, and I was just asking, like, how does evening shift work with your family life, right? Like, I wouldn't be able to see my wife all that much, or at least it would seem like that. And he said to me, well, that's why I work evening shift. And to me, as a young officer, I'm like, wow, man, that's a tough thing to say, and to say it to a new officer. But that's the way it was, right? At times, not with everybody, not with the most people, but that you should never get to that point. And it's those little things. It's tough on family. It's tough on your sleep. It's tough on, officers having to go to court after working midnight all night, or working midnight all night and going to court at 2. and all that falls into your mental health. And we get so hooked on talking about law enforcement when we're outside of work, and you go to family get-togethers and all they want to talk about is the crazy stuff that you've seen. You're like, man, it really isn't that crazy, but at times, right? Sometimes it is. And you get out of your hobbies, like we were talking about hunting, or whether or not you're fishing or playing golf, or it's important to maintain those relationships, and your relationships that you had before law enforcement. And I'm guilty of that too, right? I've got a couple close people that I still keep in contact with that aren't law enforcement, but that's kind of fallen off too. And you don't. And why is that, right? Is it a trust thing? Is it just where we see so much when we're responding to calls, we see a lot of negativity. So to try to make sure that doesn't shape how you view life as a person is very difficult. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're like driving down the road and you're like, man, that person looks so friendly, right? Like, and that's a real thing, right? And just working through that, and just remember, we are all people. This is our profession, but we're human beings, and if you want to be a decent person, right, you gotta work through those things, and it'll make you better in the long run.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked with a lot of retired guys because I'm at the age of the old guys in the department that we serve, right? So it's kind of funny when you're outside of the law enforcement circle. The old guys in various places are the guys in their 60s. But in law enforcement, the old guys are in their mid 40s to mid 50s. In fact, if you have somebody beyond their mid 50s, it's like, why are you sticking around? Like, why are you here? So, and I'm at the, I'll be 52 in September, and it's interesting. I've had a lot of conversations with the retired guys that upon retirement, they're, if their spouses are still around. And I say if, there's like you don't, like, you're just so different now. And it's like, I need you to feel things. I need you to have some sort of emotional response to things. And it's so important. You kind of alluded to some of these things, and I know the different activities and things you do with your kids, and to stay involved and that kind of thing. And I know we've talked about some coaching. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, it's okay. I give all the teachers in elementary schools in particular.
That's one of those moments I wish we were on video because they could have saw your face when he said that.
Man,
coaching basketball is.
I'll tell you, soccer was a little bit more challenging. But yes, it is. I wouldn't change it for the world, right? I truly love doing it, and I love coaching my son. And when my 3-year-old gets a little bit older, I'll be coaching them, and I'm the coordinator for basketball for Cloverdale Elementary School. So I stay involved, and I'll tell you, it's teaching them like respect and sportsmanship on the court or the field. And then when you go back to field day at the school, they all come up to you and either give you a fist bump or whatever, and they coach. And a lot of coaches that I grew up, my dad was one of them for most of my childhood in a lot of sports, but they have a major impact, I think, on leadership on you as an individual. It teaches you a lot of different things, and perseverance, and being told no or let down. So. But it's a challenge with some elementary school kids, I will tell you.
Well, what's so good about this, though, as good as you are for them, they're good for you.
Yep.
Right? It's people outside of law enforcement.
It is.
They're little people, but you're also interacting with their parents and stuff and things, too. And I know
which
that
as a
can
coach
get interesting
can be
as
good
a
and
coach.
bad. Let me just say.
Yeah. No, I fortunately have had some very good parents, so it's been great.
But doing those things along the way through this career are so important. They keep you in touch with your spouse. They keep you in touch with your kids. It keeps you in touch with the world outside of that blue family. We want it to be close knit. We want it to, be a sisterhood, a brotherhood. We want that family kind of aspect to it, to a point. But we don't want that to be the exclusive. We don't want that to be the only thing that officers are living for. And so I'm at least from the outside looking in on your life, it appears that you are doing that, and that's encouraging to me as a chaplain to see that you are leading by example in that way, not just in what you're saying, but in the things that you're doing with your family along the way. And so thank you for doing that.
No, thank you for that. And they obviously get to, the parents and the coaches that I coach with get to know me. They understand like what I do for a living, I'm a police officer. And sometimes they have questions, to ask me, or, hey, let me get your thoughts on this, or, hey, I just got a ticket for being on my phone. And I'm like, I'm sorry. You knew me didn't get you out of the ticket card.
Yeah.
Didn't work, I guess. But
you don't talk to the traffic guy about getting out of tickets.
But no, like, and honestly, it builds, you get more supporters that way too for this profession, right? Or they get to see me, like, and that was like a big thing of crime prevention too, kind of to put it all together, like, get to know me as a person, right? Yes, I'm a police officer. Yes, I have a job to do. I'm trying to be respectful, I'm fair and honest, and I keep doing my thing, right? And they get to know me on a personal level, and they're like, wow, okay, so he is out here in the community trying to help. And the same was like in crime prevention. They're like, there was a neighborhood watch group that would do a cookout, and they had select few people they would invite for their neighbor or their block or whatever it was, right? And they're like, well, hey, Danny, we would like to invite you and your family to this cookout.
Wow, that's cool.
And I will tell you, you're like, not in uniform. This is a little weird, right? But it was awesome, right? They got to know my kids. They got to know me. Got to know my wife, Nicole. And man, it was cool. And they still send us Christmas cards, right? So it's like building that relationship with them. Or even one of the folks from that group is a mentor of mine, and he will reach out to me regularly, or we'll go to lunch from time to time. And he was a leader in a different organization, not in law enforcement involved, and he had a very successful career, but he looks out for me. Or like if I had, like, my grandfather passed away, he would reach out and send me some inspirational stuff, or, hey, I had this big moment in my life, and he's reached out to me, provided me guidance. And I got that through this job, right? I got that from being a crime prevention coordinator. So yeah, it's cool for them to get to know you on that level. And, we're law enforcement officers in general. We're different folks, right? From many different backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
But we're different, right?
But still people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I was going to say, I think the unintended benefit or unplanned benefit that even what Darren, you were saying, is the fact that people do get to know you. And so that allows them to have a different perspective of law enforcement and to see the human side of law enforcement. And it gives them a much better, rapport, whatever we might want to call that, towards not just Roanoke County, but to law enforcement in general, which is really cool.
I think the theme, to kind of wrap up this podcast, I don't know if you've felt it, but relationships are key.
Absolutely.
So in supervision, supervising up, supervising down, leading without rank, relationship is the constant.
Oh, you just nailed it. Leading without rank. Man, that's good.
Yeah, we got to lead no matter where we're at,
right?
But it all is on the basis of relationship. Yep. And so when you discipline and you have somebody's relationship in mind, you don't want to wound them. You want to correct them. When you lead somebody, you have their strengths in mind and you want to make them better. That comes from having a relationship with them.
Right.
So that's pretty powerful stuff. And from you talking about one of the lowest points in your career, the hardest points of losing somebody that reported directly to you, relationship is what could have saved that and what can save in the future. So thank you for telling us that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you all.
I really appreciate you taking the time. What people don't know is we kind of put you on a spot. We didn't give you a lot of heads up on this. So,
I got like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that came to be.
Yeah. We didn't go hands on, but it was pretty close.
Right. Yeah.
I'll cash in my IOU here sometime.
Oh boy.
Well, sorry. We'll be waiting.
What have I done? What have I done?
Well, speaking of lunch,
on that note, I think it's time to go have some lunch. So, hey, thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.